So, rules of engagement, work in progress, but we'll read through this. And if you have anything that you'd like to add to it, or maybe a verse that might seem familiar to this idea, then we can look that up. But I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but we'll walk through it here. So, okay, so fear of the Lord, recognize that reverence for the Father. So, fear of the Lord usually interpreted as like reverence instead of terrifying fear in a sense. Reverence for the Father is the foundation of wisdom. So fear of the Lord is the foundation, is the beginning of wisdom. Be sure to give praise and glory and credit to him. Know that your actions can have real consequences to others and yourself. So understand that you're not the only one in the world, kind of thing, is the idea, right? And if you really have that fear and reverence for the Father, then you're going to know that he's watching your actions and your every move, and that you'll be held accountable, right? And he might make you pay for that and reap what you sow in this lifetime, hopefully in this lifetime. And it might come through whatever relationships that you're dealing with, right? So it might, something that you're doing might end up backfiring in the sense that even though you didn't know what you were doing, but in the sense that, might break a relationship, burn a bridge, something like this, or you're going to have to take a lot longer road than intended because of your failure to see, your stubbornness, your ego, and what have you, right? So make sure you kind of know your place before the Father, and that you don't try to put yourself above others. So some of that is going to be throughout here as well. So having that strong foundation, so not to be grounded in the world, not the ways of the world, but to have a strong foundation of morality and maturity. Maturity is a big one. We often find ourselves, even myself, acting like children when it comes to these kind of topics, because they're very close and dear to us, and very heavily ingrained in our way of life. So we can get very defensive and very zealous. So we got to find that maturity and really think before we speak, and choose our words wisely. And that'll be out throughout this as well. But have faith in your walk and in others. So understand that they have their own foundation, that they're working on building their foundation in the same faith. Ideally, if you're talking in a group such as this, that you shouldn't be acting like they're further from the Father than you are. Just because they have a different understanding or something like this, you may not know even a fraction of their life and what they do, and what the Father sees, right? So, treat them as if they're on the same path. That if you have that foundation, you're not going to treat them less, even if they don't have that foundation, right? Seek wisdom diligently. So look to gain wisdom by prayer and by practice. Practice is a big one. This is something that I'll be rehashing on over and over and over. It's not something that you just know about. It's not something you read and then go, oh, I know what wisdom is now. It's something you practice, right? It's something that takes experience, just like you gain wisdom throughout life, just by going through all the hard times and making all the failures and mistakes and things. But it's really looking for all those little details that the Father's hinting at and saying, hey, look at what you're doing wrong here. Look at how you can be doing better here. You really didn't need to say that, in that way to somebody. You probably didn't need to say that at all to somebody, whatever it may be. You probably shouldn't have just turned your head, and you should have acknowledged them. You should have went out and said something to that person who's clearly struggling, whatever it is, right? So it takes constant practice, and to put yourself in situations where it's going to require wisdom to get yourself back out of it, or to get yourself through it. One great way is trying to be the peacemaker, right? So if you put yourself in the middle of a heated argument or something like that, it's gonna be hard for me. It takes me out for, depending on the the argument or something like that, but it can take me out for a week. It takes a long time to recover, but there's also scripture about that. There's a time and a season for everything, and it takes time to deal with these things. And he wants you to feel these things. He wants you to let yourself go low so he can bring you back up, right? Bring you back up stronger. So seek wisdom, depend on God's wisdom. So not only just start looking for it, practice it, but really depend. Acknowledge that the true wisdom comes from God, and seek it through prayer and guidance of the Holy Spirit. So really lean heavily on not looking for your own words, but letting him speak through you. Put yourself in the position and understand and know that he's going to be there for you, and he'll be speaking through you if you have let go of your ego and worked on yourself, right? You have to clean up house for him to come live in your temple, kind of thing. You have to make way for him to be able to work, because if you have it too cluttered up and if you're way off the path, it's going to be a rough ride. So you really want to make it as comfortable and easy as possible for the Holy Spirit to really work through you, because if you have all of this arrogance and pride and bitterness is a big one too. Even if it's something personal in your life and you think that you're not showing it, it could come off as frustration, or just, kind of this look that you have in your eyes, whatever it may be, that it just looks like you're wanting to tear somebody apart, whatever it may be. You're miserable on the inside, and even though you're trying to cover it up, it's still coming through. So you really got to be able to deal with these things before opening your mouth and approaching somebody, right? So if, the old saying, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. But more so, if you don't have anything wise to say, try not to say anything at all, or keep your words short, whatever it is, and try to seek out other people's opinion on what you say, things like this, and see if you can look for that feedback to say, hey, am I saying anything of wisdom at all? Is this benefiting anyone, or is this just benefiting myself? Pray continually. Pray in repentance and ask for forgiveness, and pray in righteousness. So be walking in the path beforehand, not, oh, well, I need you now. So, an old pastor of mine used to put this in a funny way where it's like, holding like a toy Jesus or something, having it in your pocket and pulling it out only when you need him, kind of thing. Crude example, but yeah, it is kind of how we tend to behave, where we tend to forget about the Father, we forget about our purpose here and our ideal behavior that he wants us to behave in, until things get bad, which is the whole point of things getting bad, is to wake you up and say, hey, you could do things better, and I'm going to have to pull you down so I can pull you back up again, right? And if we fall into that bitterness because of it, then we're not going to get pulled back up. We're going to wallow in our own bitterness and our own fears and our own ego, whatever it may be. And if we're not seeking him and letting him put us in this position, going, hey, you give and take away, doesn't matter. You've put me in this position in order to build me up stronger, which is a really hard thing for me to do lately, but it's been a very hard focus of mine. So we got to really get ourselves on that right path, get our heart ready before really asking something from him. Of course, we can ask all the time, anytime, but if you're really expecting something from him, you need to be doing his behavior. He needs to see himself in you and go, that's my son, that's my daughter. Of course, I'm going to be there for you. Of course, anything that you ask will be given to you if you're following in righteousness, right? It's more so how you're praying and what state you're praying in than what you're praying. Don't seek in prayer wisdom, knowledge for selfish reasons. That's worded weird. This is something that we can talk about as well. Don't seek in prayer wisdom and knowledge. Okay, I feel like that needs wisdom and knowledge for selfish reasons. So if you're looking just to be this grand wise person in order to hold this over people, then you're going to be you're getting the wisdom of the world, the false wisdom of the world, and not his wisdom, because his wisdom is not boastful, right? It's not prideful. It's not arrogant. It's not aggressive. That's the word I was looking for earlier. So it's going to be very patient and probably too slow for your liking is the other thing too. But you have to have that peace. You have to take that time. And if it's this message, this prayer, whatever it is coming rushed, and it's coming, out of fear, out of impatience, out of your ego, whatever it may be, then these are the unanswered prayers, is where he's like, I can't even recognize myself in you. This is not my child, because we have to be mimicking and copying his behavior. If we're looking to gain something glorious that he has for our own selfish gain, for our own popularity, he might let you go into that and follow down this road that you shouldn't be down, but you're going to get stuck down that road, and you're going to stay in that position, and you're not going to be elevated to the position that he wants you to be in, where he wants you to be humble and really use these things for his kingdom and to bring people in and build bridges and not burn them, right? Rejoice in prayer for your blessings and trials. So thank him for everything, good or bad, because if he's not doing these things, he's not giving these trials, then he just really doesn't care. And you will see that in the world, and you'll see people just getting by and just having a good old time. These are not the people that we should really be looking towards and putting up on a pedestal and saying, oh wow, I want to be like this person because they've got it so easy, they're doing so well, they must be so great and so wise, so blessed. They'll have blessings, and they'll have blessings in this life, but they're not storing their treasures in heaven, kind of thing. They're not building themselves up for the kingdom. So this is not the bread that they're receiving, like I was reading earlier, in John, the bread of life. He says this is an eternal thing. This is an eternal nourishment. This is wisdom that he's bestowing upon you, and understanding that is going to continue into the next life. And you're going to have a better position, or maybe a closer house to him, whatever that may be. We don't really know, but there are people who are greater and lesser in the kingdom, and that's part of it, right? So the high will be brought low, will be humbled, yes, in the kingdom, but in a humbled position. And the humble, the meek, the lowly, the poor will be brought up. Those who are going through these trials and just biding their time and just getting through it, and especially those praising the Father through it. Trials will build our character, and that's that character that proceeds into the next life, right? And he wants a very strong character, a character he can really truly be proud of and say, hey, I made that, I built that character, I built this up in him, I gifted that to him through all his troubles, through all his trials, right? Seek first his kingdom and the love of all who are walking on the path. Acknowledge other people on that same path as well, right? And understand that they're going through their own trials and tribulations. And especially if they're in those trials, we can help each other through them, right? And sometimes it could be simply saying, God sees you because of this trial, that he is paying attention to you. So you must be doing something right, because you're wanting to get your heart in the right place. And it's hard to see, especially at the time and not in hindsight, but it's hard to see at the time that this is beneficial for you, that this is going to build you up better after he breaks you down. So just like breaking a stallion, something like this, you want to break in and get that machine going at its top condition. And sometimes that takes beating it around a little bit, but he's never going to put on more weight than you can handle. It might feel that way just because your own immaturity, right? Let's put it that way, right? So just as a child complains because, oh man, this hurts, or this is too much, or oh, my brother or sister so and so did this, and they're making a really big deal out of things that from your perspective seem very small or seem like absolutely nothing. And this is also what Paul explains about how the kingdom will be, is that level of maturity. Just as you were as a child and you look back to all the things that were very extreme and important to you, or very traumatizing to you, which would now not even faze you, wouldn't even think twice about it, is the same as this life. In your absolute top end maturity of what you could possibly achieve in this life would still be looked at as a very small child compared to your understanding and your maturity in the next life, right? But that character will be that foundation for that. You'll come into greater understanding and maturity by being in that new body, by seeing the kingdom. But how much of your personality changes or not, I don't know. It seems like this is where we build that personality, we build that character, and show that we are responsible enough to be part of his priesthood, to be part of his kingdom, to be part of that first resurrection. This is what that first resurrection is all about. This is what this whole discipline is all about, because there will be people who make it who don't even realize that they're going to make it. This may be for that second resurrection, when all are judged and everything, good or bad, every word that they've said is weighed in the balance. But for those of that first resurrection, this is the cream of the crop. This is the first fruits. There's no doubt about this. This is the best. I recognize them as my children. They don't go through judgment. This is the exception. They're pardoned, basically, right? They're pardoned from that whole judgment. And he recognizes you as his own. And you recognize him. Like, this is really, truly knowing him is walking in his behavior. And this is something that we need to be able to understand, whether we're really in it or not, or again, humble ourselves and act like we're not when we are, and say, hey, I need to work on myself more. I know I'm not in this perfect position, and maybe it's not my place to say something right now, or if this is a really heavy topic for you, or you feel like you really want to argue with someone or state your opinion or whatever it may be, find the right time or place for it, or simply ask, hey, do you want to hear this? Better yet, I would like to help, teach people or even help write for people, whatever it is the subject that they're looking to get into, and write a paper about it. That way they can just share that paper with somebody. They can read it in their own time, try to make it as short, clear, and concise as possible. And that way there's not the pressure and the argument and the tension that comes with saying, hey, no, this is the way it is. Or even if you simply said, oh, here's another way, can still rub people the wrong way. And we need to learn how to live in harmony, but yet in different understanding. And it can be done. It has been done. But we've definitely, as a whole people, as the body of Christ, we've really kind of lost our way. And if we can get ourselves grounded by just some simple ideas, some simple so-called rules, then hopefully we can get together and really get a lot further together. So I think I have a few solutions with that. Hopefully we can find that even just in this rules of engagement. So let's see. Practice discipline. Don't harbor hostility, hate, and bitterness. So don't hold on to these things. Don't hold it against somebody else. Go after someone or go slander somebody. And that can take some discipline, because we really want our revenge, and it's hard to give that up to the Father, right? But practice meekness. So even though you have the power, choosing not to use it. Humility, choosing to put yourself low on purpose, right? And practicing love, really giving yourself up. This is, I would put love and self-sacrifice. That's the word I'm looking for. Self-sacrifice is a really big one. Be mindful of the fruits of the Spirit. Look into fasting and afflicting yourself to practice humbleness. Be mindful of the fruits of the Spirit is be mindful of not only in yourself but of others. See the value of what they bring, and see when the Father's really working through them. Like if they bring peace to a situation, seek that out and let them be recognized for that, and say, hey, the Father's used you to bring some peace to this situation, and really settled things down, or gave some wisdom to somebody, whatever the thing may be, or counseled someone. Now, this doesn't have to be a public display of, hey, look at this person, but personally message them or something and say, the Father's recognized you and worked through you today, and this is, give all glory to Him, of course, right? Look into fasting and afflicting yourself is a really big one. This is something that truly teaches discipline. If you can overcome your stomach, which has enough nerve endings to be a second brain, it can override your brain, hence throwing up or what have you. But if you can say, hey, I'm going to choose when food enters my stomach, if you can master your own body, then maybe you can start mastering your own mind and your own selfish desires, intuitions, and things like this. And you can put those to the side and put yourself to the side, put your ego to the side, and make way for His personality, for His Spirit to work through you, right? And that is one of the great things that fasting does for us as well. Not only shuts down your body and brings you to a better health and starts resetting some things, which is always fantastic. Maybe gets your hormones in balance and all sorts of things, right? But you're also choosing to put yourself at a lower state, even though you have the ability to be at a higher state. Because especially in modern times, and some of the poorest of us still live better than kings in the past sometimes. So we do live at a very exalted state sometimes, having all of this food and availability, instant food, being able to go buy whatever kind of food we'd like, or whatever this is, and it does make us lazy. So afflicting ourselves on purpose can be a great way to combat that and really practice that discipline, just as much as exercise or something along these lines. Having an art or some other discipline that you choose to go to. Music is a great one, of course. Be at peace.
Real quick,
Oh, yeah.
sorry, Josh. I have a question on that
Yeah.
fasting and afflicting.
Okay.
I was trying not to jump in, but this
No, go
was
ahead.
just on my heart. So you and I were looking into when we're fasting, and especially on the feast or the Day of Atonement, not Feast of Atonement, the Day of Atonement. Is this one of those things where you feel like we should keep practicing the sackcloth, kind of thing, like what they're talking about in Scripture?
I mean, if you really want to, if you want to go out into the middle of the town square and start doing something like that, depending on your city, then by all means go for it. I mean, that'll definitely be humbling. People think you're all sorts of crazy. But the idea is, that public display of you're putting yourself in a lesser state, and if you're already kind of wearing rags as it is, especially back then wearing something even rougher and more irritating, like just a very rough spun fabric only used for sacks of whatever, Um,
Because it's going to lead into the next question, because I can actually see this becoming a debate later on.
right.
So then, where you're saying, okay, in order to afflict yourself more, do it as a public display of things. But somebody's going to come back and they're going to talk about in the New Testament, it's saying don't go out there and do these things. When you do this fasting and stuff, do it in kind of a secret
Right.
thing. So I'm just trying to straighten it out in my head how
Hmm.
to adhere to scripture, but do it in a still kind of a humbled thing and not elevating
Right.
yourself. But yet, there's so many people that believe that you don't need to do these things. So I'm just kind of trying
Right.
to get a feel for what should we be looking for when we look into these scriptures, because each person has that different walk with the Father,
Right.
and trying to do these things right. But if somebody new's coming along, I would like to know how would we present that to somebody that's kind of new without making them feel as if like it's going to be a burden.
Right. And this is where you'll start seeing all these so-called contradictions of anything in the Old Testament, New Testament, is because he's showing you through discernment what some of these practices should be looked at and held to be, right? Like if you're putting on this sackcloth and ashes, it's not to make yourself look sick, extra sick was the idea, especially with the Pharisees, and maybe put something on to make your skin look more, sickly or dry or whatever it may be, and put on your face. Oh, you're supposed to still hold your composure, right? But the idea is that this is not supposed to be, oh, everybody look at how humble I'm being. This is something that is personal to you because, especially if, say, you're a king or something like that. I mean, if someone sees that you're taking off these fancy garments or something like that, like if you were to see whatever movie star or something like that suddenly change their life and they put on just whatever it is, humble clothes of some kind or simple kind of ragged kind of clothes, or move out to, middle of Africa or something like that and start living in a hut or something, then yeah, that could be seen as very humbling, right? And it's like, okay, they've given away their glory and this is their own personal thing. So if you have a really huge issue with how you're seen by people, maybe you're their popular one at school or whatever the case may be, or what have you. And I'm not saying like, oh, go and take a video of yourself and go, oh, look at how humble I am. That's not the point. Um, Even go to a city where no one knows you, if you really have to, right? And say, hey, I'm just maybe put on farmer clothes and go out to a farming town or something like that if you're from a big city, and just see how it is to be in the world and be humbled, right? And live that humble life kind of thing, right? Kind of like, let's say, undercover boss or something like this, right? Where you're trying to be one of everyone else. And if you're at this higher state, whether that may be an actual position or just your own ego, because you think that you're, especially if you let's say work out a lot or something like that, oh, I'm the strong one or whatever this is, you have this outward appearance or you have a lot of charisma or whatever that may be, then that might be just not talking for you, right? That might be something different for everyone. And it's about what will actually impact you, what will slap you in the face and really make you wake up, right? Now for them, apparently, I don't know, wearing sackcloth and ashes was maybe the thing to do, and also in private, but it was also done as a public kind of group thing, which is totally fine as well, right? And like if everyone's getting in this together, now the king and the peasants are all wearing the same thing, right? Those who are dirt poor, and the king and everyone in between are now wearing the same thing for doing this fast or whatever it may be, like we see in Isaiah and some other places, right? That's going to be according to their time, their culture, a lot of variables, right? So this is where that discernment really comes into play, and say, what do you actually need to work on? What do you need to take care or take away from yourself to lower yourself, to deflate that ego in some sort of way, to understand that you're not the purpose of this world. You're not the focus on this world. You're not the only one in this world, right? So that's going to look very different to a lot of people. And it's something that you're just going to kind of have to find and try out and test. And if you're way too comfortable with something, well, maybe try something else that doesn't make you comfortable, right? If that's literally wearing
Yeah.
sackcloth, because burlap is not fun to have on your skin, it'll make you red sometimes. So, but yeah, if
Right.
that's something you want to do at your own home in your own backyard and go camp out or do whatever you want to do to really get yourself disconnected from the world that's driving you astray, right? To pull yourself out of it and say, oh, wait, there's other things in this world. There's other ways of feeling in this world, right? That might be, really kneeling down to somebody and serving somebody or asking for forgiveness and putting your face on the ground or something that is humiliating to you, whatever it is that you need to do to understand that you're not above somebody. And
And these are all,
yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
Josh. Yeah,
No, go
these
ahead.
are all great, great points. And I bring this up because we are getting ready to come into the biblical feasts. And, it seems like each year there's so many people that are new to trying to study it out, what to do. There's like 20 questions, how do I do this? How can I do this right? Blah, blah, blah. And so, these are things that, yeah, you're right. We need to think about this as these biblical feasts are coming up. And not just for that, but anytime that we're called to fast or called to afflict ourselves for something.
Be at peace and seek to have a peaceful spirit, mind, and body to prepare yourself to be around others. So really search for that joy, whatever that is, that pure thing that makes you happy, and putting a smile on someone else's face. Something like this. To be at peace is also to seek forgiveness of someone else. Try to have your soul at rest, ideally, especially before speaking up to somebody, especially about really sensitive topics or anything like this. You need to be really in the right mind, and it doesn't sound like that would be the case. It's like, oh, this is just information or something like that, but it's about the delivery more than just the information. Let alone if you're walking down this kind of selfish path, this path of bitterness and things like this, then you might be gathering information that's just far from the truth. And it can still be, even if it was 100% fact, still not be truth. And in the way that Paul and James and others put this is not the truth. The truth is that behavior. This is how we're supposed to behave. It's the whole purpose of this world is how we're supposed to behave, not only with ourselves, and to the Father by ourselves in this world, but how we're supposed to behave with each other and how we're supposed to have peace with each other. So the whole purpose of being here is getting through these trials, and ideally getting through these trials together, right? Is to build up our character with each other and not build ourselves up over each other, right? So if we can't have that peace of mind, then it sounds like we have some things that we need to work on. And if it's something that has happened to us, some sort of crisis, some sort of loss, then that can be something that is dealt with as well. And just like with Aaron losing his sons, he couldn't perform his duties either. So there's a time for mourning, right? And if you need to mourn, if you need to walk away, if you need to just simply be silent and listen, and maybe wait for a time to just fellowship instead of speak about doctrine or any specific issue, then wait for that time and wait until you're in that right mind, and you find that discipline, you find your firm foundation, you feel like you could stand on your own 2 feet again, then go out and spread that understanding, that word, and be open to correction. So that's another thing that'll come up here. Practice integrity. This is something that I feel like should even be number one here. So this is part of wisdom. This is something that we'll flesh out during the whole wisdom page here, inside of the wisdom page. But integrity is a very big part of the personality and behavior of the Father, all his spirits, and how these angels work through us, right? And it's not going to really want to work through us if we have no integrity, if we don't choose to be of single mind and stick to his way, regardless of what crowd we're in front of or if we're by ourselves at all. So practice what you preach, of single-minded, or be of single mind, displaying the same character wherever you go. Be considerate of others and try to stand in their shoes. So try to have see through their eyes and be in their perspective, and have empathy and compassion for others, and show this no matter the situation, no matter if someone's screaming in front of your face or whatever it is that you can't seem to handle, right? Show that same behavior no matter what. If you're in a group with your friends, if you're in a group with a church, if you're in a group with, your believers and fellowshipping online, or wherever you're at with your family, the idea is to not be sure, you could speak a little differently with your family or friends or something like this. Maybe even if your family speaks a different dialect or language or something like this, it's not about being robotic in any sense either. It's about holding true to that integrity, that behavior the whole time. So it's not that, while you're at home you're screaming and yelling at your kids in a way that is very rage inducing and what have you, and you're focusing on yourself and you're just throwing everything to the wind whenever you're by yourself or at work with your friends, and you're kind of, especially as a guy, talking like guys might do at work. The idea is to show that integrity no matter where you're at. So find that balance and find how to be set apart in every way that you walk and everything that you do. So as James says, to take hold of your tongue kind of thing, and make sure that you're using your tongue for only holy things. Because it's not to be profaned. It's not to be mixed with things that are common and uncommon, right? And this is, again, the ideal goal. Easier said than done, but that should be our goal. That should be our purpose, is to constantly get closer and closer and closer to that, and not just sell ourselves out, basically. And this is that word that is, go whoring after something and prostitute yourself out, sell yourself, sell your integrity for what the world has to offer, right? So if you're like, well, it's fine, it's just this, it's just a movie, it's just my old buddy, it's just my old friend, this is just the way that we talk. You should be an example to them, show them that light, and go, wow, you're very different than I used to see you as. Or it's funny that you not only act this way at work, but I got to come over to your house and you still act the same way there. People will notice this kind of thing because people are naturally double-minded. They'll be two-faced and they'll put on a different mask wherever they go. This is something that we really need to focus on. And that's not to say that if you're terrible one place, you should be terrible everywhere, but understand what that behavior is that you're supposed to be displaying, and display that everywhere. Embrace instruction and correction. Be open to receiving guidance and correction. This is how we grow in wisdom. And avoid being offended and argumentative. This is something I put as beforehand, because this is something that you really need to prepare yourself for and go, I'm not going to argue about this. If someone brings up a calendar, brings up a this, brings up a that, I'm not going to state my opinion. I'm not going to say, hey, they're wrong, or whatever it is, or look for a fight, look for a debate, and try to go back and forth with someone. This really is not the behavior. This is exactly what Paul was preaching against. This is not the way, right? There is a way, and that is not the way, right? That is not a way that brings peace. That's not a way that puts a smile on anyone's face, unless it's for a sinister reason. That is not what the Father looks for, right? I understand that we're all clueless, children right now. Know what you bring to the table. So this is just recognizing your gifts and recognizing what you have to offer. And that's not just simply saying, oh, hey, look at me, I'm really good at this, I'm really good at that. But this is a way of knowing what you bring to a table of a conversation and to a group of people, and go, well, I'm the peacemaker, I will speak out when no one else will, or I know how to, lead people in a proper manner, or whatever that is. I really am good with taking someone to the side when they're clearly having trouble, or whatever that is, and praying with them, or speaking out whenever something is getting kind of fired up or whatever, and say, hey, can we just stop and can we pray? I feel like, whatever this is that's going on needs to be addressed. Whatever the matter may be at hand, this is about how to deal with each other. So I don't even know what gifts the Father has given you and how to use them with care. Recognize others' gifts and let them shine as well, and not overshadow them. If you feel like, well, but I'm the one who does this and I'm the one who does that, that's again ego speaking. And if you are to go out there and do that thing, then you're probably not going to do it in such a great way as someone else who, let's say, might not be able to do this as well, but at least they can do it with understanding and compassion, and that's what really counts. So this is all before going into a conversation, going into a group. We call it prepare yourself for spiritual warfare, because as soon as someone brings up a topic that's controversial or something, you'll notice that the winds change, sort of thing, and something is different. Something is upsetting someone or everyone. and recognize that, our battle is not against flesh and blood, but it's against these things that influence us, right? And we got to choose who is the one influencing us. Is it the Father and his spirits, or is it the devil and his spirits, right? So which one are we going to allow to influence us, and how are we going to recognize that and take control of that situation with the Father's authority that he's given to us through his Son, right? So this I'm calling the offense. This again can kind of be reworked. Some of this is redundant, or not redundant, but could be placed in both, and then it would be redundant. And then we call it defense or listening. So this is what to focus on when you are the one speaking, when you have the floor, when to really control your tongue. If someone's talking over you or trying to say, hey, well, I want to say my piece about this and this and that, then it's not about saying, well, I'm the one talking. Well, you're talking over me. And we've heard it 1,000 times, I'm sure, right? Especially in Discord and what have you, is that people want to be heard, and they will push their way through the crowd to be heard because maybe they haven't been heard in other settings or whatever it is. And people have their reasons. Have that understanding. Even if they are in the wrong, it just doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter how much they're in the wrong. You could still be in the right and choose to have that self-control and choose when to say something and also how to say something. So practice that self-control on when to speak back to someone, or if they're speaking over you or whatever it is. Again, just hold your tongue and say, can I get back to what I was saying, or whatever it is, or just simply let it go, right? You can always let it go. Speak wisely. So when speaking, use your words carefully and thoughtfully, ensuring that they are respectful and constructive. Think before speaking, right? So is this really something that is going to build us up? Is this something that's going to bring wisdom? Is this something that's going to change someone's life in some way? Or is there maybe a better time and a better setting to say these kind of things? Whatever it is. So we all get out of hand with this type of thing, of course, and we'll get carried off like we do with all these tangents and things. And this is why I'm bringing these kind of things to the table, is not to speak against someone for doing these kind of things, but like, hey, we can be more constructive when we're coming together for a purpose, for Bible study, whatever it may be. And we can be more constructive and really get somewhere if we're having purpose to our words and the things that we're saying, right? And also recognize when someone else is doing the same. But whenever we kind of steamroll others and just steal the mic basically and steal the spotlight and go on for 5, 10, 30 minutes or longer, I've seen, right? Where you were talking about one thing and now we're talking about someone else's thing and whatever they feel is very important, and it's completely off subject or off from whatever scripture we're reading, say it's Torah portion, whatever it may be that you're doing that day. And especially for me who has trouble focusing as it is and have really hard time figuring out, what we're even talking about. And I will get bored very fast and really want to walk away and go, what were we ever even talking about? Or I might even raise my hand and say, hey, are we still talking about this verse or not? Because it's getting way out of hand, and people see it as just like fellowship and this and that. And I've heard all sorts of different kind of excuses, but it's like, but are you setting a purpose for what this is about? Or are we just freely talking and just using this as a conversation starter? So really stating on what the purpose of your get together is would be wise as well. But again, think before speaking and try to choose your words wisely, and pay attention to your tone of voice on how you're speaking. Avoid pride and arrogance. Recognize that pride leads to downfall, and seek humility to compensate for that, right? So to avoid that happening, to avoid you being put in your place, really put yourself down first, because it will be a much easier fall if you kneel down versus someone pushing you down. As God exalts the humble, so he lifts up the humble, he lifts those who are low. Listen to your tone of voice and your wording in your deliverance, and be mindful to deliver your message with love and not hostility. Even though you think that this is just something really great and you're so happy about this information that you have to share, you're very zealous about it, that zealousness will come off as hostility for a lot of people as well, right? It's like, why do they feel like they need to say this so much and I can't get a word in edgewise? I can't say anything. We can't even stop them from talking, kind of thing. That hostility does not necessarily have to sound like anger either. It could just be a lot of zealousness, right? That can come from pride and arrogance. You can even be overly prideful of the word and whatever thing that you found and whatever new, kind of like a dog with a new toy kind of thing. And you're looking just to be wild and eventually be destructive with it. And this is why we got to go, okay, let's marinate on this. Let's meditate on this for a while and see what comes of it and see where is the right time to speak about this or share this, because I often find myself coming up with all sorts of ideas or revelations, and it feels like, and I'm not sharing it with others. I want to, I'm dying to, but I don't find the right place to do it very often. And sometimes I will push myself in there and try to say something. And again, you're just planting seeds on the wrong path kind of thing and not out in the field. And if you have that patience, you'll find the proper place to plant that seed. But if you get impatient and let your pride and arrogance kind of take over, even though you think it's for some goodwill or whatever, you have good intentions, but it could still end up having some destruction following that. So love your neighbor and your brother. Show love and kindness to others, treating them as you would like to be treated. So the golden rule, of course. Speak with a soft tone and gentle words. So this can be harder for some than others. Some just naturally have a pretty rough disposition on how they talk and present themselves. Some are kind of set in their ways, whatever it may be. But we have to have some gentleness and mercy for them as well. But if it comes to be a very big issue, you can always, say, hey, by the way, I know you didn't mean to, but you're coming off a little loud or aggressive or whatever it is. And, give soft correction here and there. If they choose to correct, they choose to correct, but you can't force them, right? You can't bring that horse to the water and force it to drink, sort of thing. Don't be dominating or put yourself above people. And this is another issue I've seen quite often, is people will be very dominating in certain crowds, and sometimes, funny enough, not in every situation, but certain crowds, certain servers, certain groups, they will have the confidence to be very dominating and really take over conversation and really show off all their knowledge and what they see as wisdom. And again, this is not that wisdom. So this is what we have to be very careful for and really understand the difference. Be open to interruption and treat them with respect. So it's fine if someone talks over you, especially on things like Discord or Zoom or something like this, where there is a delay at points, and it's really hard to tell when certain people are done talking, especially if you can't see them. Don't get offended by it. And you will see people do that a lot, where, hey, I was talking, oh, well, I can't even finish talking, or whatever the thing is. And as soon as you start seeing that, everyone should just try to do their best to just shut down. If someone has something to say, let them get it off their chest, or try to, hey, I know you've got a lot to say, but we're getting a little off track here. Or, hey, I'm really interested in what you have to say, but maybe we can save this for another time, or I can talk to you, privately, and maybe we can write this stuff down together. At least this is what I would like to start doing with people, is let's have a way for them to get it off of their chest completely, because I found myself having the same issue. Like, if I don't write this down somewhere, I feel very unrelieved, and I have to constantly keep trying to tell people. And if you don't have a really strong stage to stand on and a great audience, it feels like you haven't been heard, haven't been listened to at all, and you haven't really got your point across. But if you can get it on page, you can work on that idea and that understanding, and maybe, again, seek correction and maybe share that with people. And this is the idea I'm trying to share here. Is not more so what I'm trying to do for myself, but I'm trying to share a concept more than anyone, or more than anything, is share a concept with people to show them that there is another way of doing things that can really lead to good growth, I should say, and also relief, because you're like, hey, I don't have to even think about that or talk about that anymore. I can just share a page with someone, and that is all my words, and I know they're the right words because I've reviewed this. I've had it peer reviewed by people. We've worked on it together, so this is in a good state to share this. And if you don't have your thoughts together enough to do that, then maybe it's not your place to start speaking either. So, and you'll also figure out if you have your own words in there, or if you're simply just parroting people too, because I would also try to teach people how to make their references known, just like you've done in school with any essays or anything like that. Cite your sources. This is something we should also start doing as well. Be an example to others. Speak with clarity, patience, integrity, and ask for feedback and correction. So as you're finishing talking, as you're talking, be an example of what it looks like that everyone should be doing as they speak. So it's fine if you even have trouble speaking or speech impediment or something like that, but it's in the tone of your voice and it's how you treat people. So if you're constantly saying, hey, you can talk later or something like that, and you're trying to shut them down constantly or just speaking very rude and very arrogant to people, it doesn't matter that they're in the wrong because you're just joining their party by doing that. So you don't want to go down to their level in a sense. Be that good example. On the opposite side, when you are the one listening, there are some things to look out for and other things to keep in focus while you're the one listening to someone either ranting or speaking about some point or whatever it is that they may be doing, good or bad, but maybe they really have something to say. If they say something that is outside your understanding, let's put it, or something that feels offensive or something that feels wrong, it is not your time or it is not your place and it's not the time to correct them right then and there. Just let them speak their piece. They may have even misspoken, and you can ask them about that later. Don't interrupt someone's train of thought kind of thing, because then we'll really get off and you're just going to rub people the wrong way anyhow. So guard your heart and guard your tongue. So this is more so on the defense side. So keep yourself from lashing out and taking offense and being triggered by others' opinions and harsh statements, and be
Okay, keep yourself from lashing out and taking offenses and be triggered by others' opinions or harsh statements or sure to them speaking out in ignorance. Okay, yeah, you're gonna have to break that up into like 2 sentences maybe.
What is that talking about? I write these things out without even thinking.
That sure word doesn't fit in there.
No, it doesn't. I think this is about them speaking out in ignorance. If someone is saying something out of ignorance, if it feels like they're saying something ignorant, that they're not educated on the subject properly or whatever it is that we feel about them, you don't have to educate them right there, is the point I'm getting to. Triggered by others' opinions, harsh statements, or by them speaking out in ignorance, that's fine. Be quick to hear and slow to speak. Ask if others are interested in a differing opinion or an idea before pushing it as a counter argument that causes discord. So yeah, that's also worded a little funny. We'll get to that later. But consider the effect of your question and keep them to a minimum. So like, just don't constantly interrupt and always have something to say. Is the idea is find the right timing and place for it. Feel out the crowd to see if there is this the time for new ideas, or is there a greater purpose and understanding of what the conversation might be, right? So if you're constantly just sitting there nitpicking and looking for all the minutia of every little thing that's said, then you're just looking for attention at that point, right?
Arguing for the sake of arguing.
There you go. I know, right?
Hugh said, well said, Josh. We don't have to educate them right then, right there. Better to listen and discern if now is the time to plant and step back to ask ourselves questions before asking the other person questions. He said, I was called out today for doing that because of my assumptions. It was a good lesson. In this example, I found out that the other person already knew and I misinterpreted their question.
Right. And that's the other thing too, because sometimes things can just come across a little weird or odd, and it's like, it sounds like they're saying something different. But I've been caught up in a conversation like that a couple months ago or whatever it was, and come to find out, like, it was just all about semantics, and we were saying the same thing, but it sounded like an argument. It sounded like opposing opinions or something like that. But yeah, it was the same. Guard your eyes and ears. Be cautious about what people show and present, and don't be misled by new information or worldly images or excitement or extra biblical books. So if you are especially easily triggered by these type of things, or don't have that firm foundation, or if you just feel uncomfortable about some sort of topic, or maybe it's too deep or too whatever you're talking about, like esoteric things or witchcraft or something that is someone's not familiar with or comfortable with or something like that. Maybe they're new to the faith. Maybe that is a trigger issue for them because it was something they were involved in, even though you're trying to speak at it, in a way to be able to defend yourself or against these type of things. It could still be kind of poison in our mouth. We got to be considerate of others and in their position. So this is also to what people are presenting, because it might sound, you might consider it unbiblical or ungodly or something like that, and it may be and it may not be, right? But the idea is just to guard your own heart, right? Chew up the meat, spit out the bones sort of thing. Disregard it for right now. If you feel like it needs to be addressed, address it at a better time. Maybe fully let them explain their idea. Maybe drop a couple. Are you meaning this? Are you meaning that? Be soft about it. But if it does, if they're reassuring what you're fearing at that point, then go, okay, well, you don't have to just burn that bridge either and go, okay, well, I'm just gonna, step away for a little bit, or turn off my ears in a sense, and I'm just not gonna let this bother me. This is something that they're going through. This is something that they're dealing with. Whatever it is, and it doesn't have to be, again, addressed at that moment. So if you're like, well, I don't like that book, I don't like that book, you shouldn't be reading that book. You shouldn't be talking about, the Talmud. You shouldn't be talking about, this book or that book, or you shouldn't even look at that, whatever it is that you're getting kind of triggered by. And hear someone out, but at the same time, guard yourself. Or if it really disturbs you, then maybe message someone personally or whatever it is. Or, hey, can we, maybe lead the conversation in another direction? Yeah, you can say, hey, I'm kind of uncomfortable with this, or I don't know if this is the right time for this. Maybe, this is so far off from the subject, but try to be polite about it at the same time. But again, if you feel like there's just no way to be polite about it, or you're just too bothered by whatever it is that they're presenting, you can easily just walk away. But the idea is to not hold that against them at the same time. Be open to them as a person, as a human being who's going through the same walk as anyone else, and we find ourselves on different parts of the path, but we're all trying to head towards the same thing. We are always going to have different kind of perspectives and different kind of interest in things like this. 5 years, especially 5 years ago, I had all sorts of different interests and was very zealous about certain things and was really interested in all these kind of wild, crazy ideas. But now I find myself just very disinterested in them, but I'm not going to just say, hey, that's not important. Hey, that's not whatever, and just kind of derail somebody just for the sake of it. Just because you feel like you're in a different position or higher position or whatever it is that you're dealing with, if your ego's attacking you at that point, kind of thing, is, again, just guard yourself, stick to your own foundation, and not be disturbed by whatever someone else throws at you. No, yeah, I'll have to put something here on zealousness specifically, especially about speaking out to somebody, because if you're trying to address something that you think is unbiblical or something like that, and this is exactly why we really, really, really have to pay attention reading the New Testament, reading everything that Jesus is saying to everybody, right? Because he is speaking out in love and he's speaking to people as a group, and he's addressing the weightier matters, because everything else will follow after you establish that foundation. And there's some things that you just don't have to deal with. You don't have to address right away, because especially if someone's lost or confused in something, the best way to get them out of that is by showing them love, to give them something better to attach themselves to, because whatever it is that they were in or their understanding, it's just a way of comfort, right? Because it is really difficult to be in the state where you have just no idea about anything, and because you have no idea about anything, where it feels like you're just so totally lost and people are mistreating you because of it, you lose all hope. I mean, you lose hope in the Father, and you lose faith in the Father, because you're like, well, clearly no one is following this. Maybe he just doesn't exist, and all these people are just doing whatever they feel, is their own idea of a god or something like that. And that's kind of what they're doing, right? So this is why we really have to have that strong foundation. So if we do find a way to word this better and better and better as we go, and really try to, especially leaders in a group or people who have their own server, or anyone who are very active or really speak out against any newcomers or something like that, or speak out against any topics, they really need to have these things down pat, right? They really need to have them fully understood and be walking it out. And it shouldn't be even a question to go, oh, hey, I have someone who is bleeding from the side and they are hurting so bad and they need to come into a group and feel comfortable that they're not going to be bashed for whatever thing that they're into or whatever understanding that they have or something like that. Because if they're looking to seek the Father, then pave the way for them, right? Help them out and show them that this path is the path to be on, right? His yoke is easy and his burden is light, right? His teaching is easy. It's very simple. It's treat people nice, right? Treat people like human beings, like you want to be treated. Treat them like they are a soul that God made, right? And that they are put there, especially in front of you, for a reason, for you to display His light and not your own, right? And not your own idea of whatever His way is really show it. It shouldn't even be in question on what this is, or, oh, are they following His way or not? You will know, right? You will know, because there won't be any kind of conflict. There won't be any kind of discomfort or anything like that. You will know.
And
Uh,
that's why you'll hear me get so passionate on certain servers, even my own, being very guarded about it, because I have seen so much hurt that comes from just mere words or a mere attitude, or you're bringing a new person in and then they get bullied and then they're like, what's the point? I don't want to be a part of that.
yeah,
And I don't,
it would.
we can't reach those kind of people. And it's terrible to say that some of the worst behavior you see is in the body of believers. And that's again why I think this is a wonderful thing that needs to be presented on all platforms. Totally agree with you there. And Pam said she has to go here real quick.
Okay.
So, but yeah, when you were reading that last bit there, Josh, that's whenever it hit me, the guilty by association thing. Well, trying to figure out how to fit that in this rules of engagement, because I think sometimes people don't stop to take a moment to look at themselves and the company they keep. You know, you got to kind of look at the company you keep too, because not only are you known by the fruits of your labor, but by those that surround you.
Countering a bully, identifying negative spirits and stop the conversation and ask to pray. Use calm speech and humbleness to counter zealousness, pride and arrogance, self-righteousness and anger. So be thoughtful in your words about how to counter, someone who is being a bully, whether they are conscious of it or not. So these things that we allow into our lives and these behaviors we allow into our lives that can come against each other. Don't know why it happens so often, but it surely does, and you'll find it everywhere. So we've got to prepare ourselves to be able to say something and make sure that we're in the right mind to be able to say something, and pray even beforehand if we're really nervous about it or unsure about saying something to someone who's just, again, being very zealous, and they're kind of not necessarily that they are even saying something wrong against somebody else, but they could be simply being a bully by steamrolling someone and stealing the limelight all the time, kind of thing, and just trying to make it their show when it should be a group conversation, or maybe it's a study or something like this, some sort of planned study, and just take it off for like, half an hour or something like this, or just constantly interrupting or whatever it may be, or always having an opinion, something like this. It can be seen as bullying, right? Where you're really just pushing your way through there constantly, right? Prepare ourselves for that. Be the peacemaker. So this kind of goes in line with that. So when discussing, or when discussions are getting heated, step in and diffuse the situation by speaking up in love and respect. Possibly ask to moderate for a moderator. This is weird. Possibly ask to moderate, or for a moderator, or even simply to, or ask for for someone to be a moderator, for someone moderator is what I was going for, I think, or even to simply shelf the argument or let it go by agreeing to disagree, sort of thing. So find a way to end this heated battle. So say, hey, if the situation calls for it, maybe this is just a general conversation or something like that, or they're trying to make a way forward debate. Say, okay, you want to debate on the subject, you want to go back and forth on it. Can we have someone that you're going to agree to control the situation? Can we find a way for peace? If they really want to go through this heated debate, maybe that's the whole purpose of the server or whatever, that's fine. But find a way to find that peace and give someone else the control over that situation, so it's not just two heads bashing against each other. So, and that way they can put themselves in their own place and understand that they have to give someone else time to speak, so on and so forth. But better yet, probably just shelf that for another time and simply just let go and let the conversation go wherever it may. Judge with love and forgiveness. Approach judgment and mercy and forgiveness. Sorry. Approach judgment with mercy and forgiveness, avoiding revenge and condemnation. So going out of your way to condemn somebody and say, oh, you're wrong and you're doing this, or you're going to hell for that, or whatever it may be, right? Or going out and seeking revenge again, slandering someone's name, gossiping against somebody, or trying to get them kicked off, or whatever it may be in an online situation, at least. But this could very well uh, come into the real world, and just again, don't seek vengeance. Let that vengeance be the Father's, and let Him deal with it. Right? Let Him work on that person, and let Him work on their heart if you're not in that place to do so. And don't go out there condemning someone else, because we want to. This is repeated. Whatever I just put up here is, don't put yourself in the judgment seat, basically. And I can even put that in here as well. But don't put yourself in the judgment seat to be able to condemn somebody, because you want the same thing done for you whenever it comes to judgment day for you, or whenever it comes to the resurrection or what have you. You want that, all that you've done to be pardoned and forgiven, right? You want that mercy, and you don't want to judge someone so harshly, because he will judge you the same way, right? So he will judge you against your own measure. Give them the benefit of the doubt, assuming that they are not being deceitful, malicious, or trying to cause discord. So just make the assumption that they are trying to do this out of good intent, even if it really does not seem so, unless they come out right and say, hey, I am trying to do this. Like, you need witnesses, you need proof to be able to come against somebody and condemn them, to say that they're actually doing that thing. Otherwise, you're just making assumptions, or your feelings are getting hurt. Whatever, maybe someone is, again, being the bully, but again, be the example. Show that you can be better than that, and you don't have to stoop to their level and cause even more discord because of it, right? Even if it feels like someone's really trying to go out of their way to do so. And if it becomes a continuous issue, then you go to them with, especially if it's personal, then you go to them by yourself and see if they'll respond. If not, again, go to the group, whoever's leading, try to have a group discussion with them. Know your enemy. Understand that people are not the enemy, but only the spirits that influence them. Know that the tactics of the devil, and how to oppose them in righteousness. So again, know your enemy, know what he does to deceive, know what he does to derail a conversation, to cause discord, to cause frustration, and all of these things. Recognize it and nip it in the bud, sort of thing, by stopping that conversation, by addressing the situation, by addressing the negative spirit in the room, sort of thing, right? Resist the enemy with humbleness, meekness, and not pride, and not hostility. Do not feed into anger and stress. Be open and gentle about how someone might be affecting you. So it's, again, hey, you're really making me upset. You're really making me angry right now. Oh, you're just rubbing me the wrong way. Again, even doing that, even if someone is fully in the wrong, if you're approaching it with the same sort of energy, with the same sort of behavior, then two wrongs don't make a right, sort of thing. And this is the issue that comes afterwards, after a conversation about how you end up dealing with it. This is something that definitely affects me quite a lot, which is how you end up taking these things to heart. Whatever happens, good or bad, because I can even be kind of thrown off my feet whenever it comes to a really great conversation where it feels maybe even life-changing or something like this. You have maybe even receive some sort of peace or something of wonder, something great, whatever, in how to meditate on that sort of thing. But more so on the negative side is dealing with unforgiveness. So whether someone won't forgive you, but more so you won't forgive somebody else. So let go of offenses and grudges. Rejection. Not everyone will accept you or your input or your message. Don't let it rule your heart. So don't let these things rule your life. Don't let it overcome you with bitterness and rage and frustration and whatever it may be. Bitterness, acknowledge your bitterness and take it to the Father. Root it out, or it will rot your insides. So I don't even have the reference that refers to that, I don't think, on here. What was that? Isaiah? Retaliation, backbiting. Don't seek revenge for disrespect or look to slander someone's name. So some of these things I've covered already, but this is something to really focus on, really look at and meditate on after the matter, and go, well, you know what? I know he really rubbed me the wrong way. Oh, that person really said something not true, something dumb, something disrespectful, whatever it is, and don't go, well, I'm going to make sure everybody knows that. I'm going to make sure everyone knows this about them, or that they're this way, or go gossiping against them, or whatever it may be, right? Ask for forgiveness. If you have offended someone, let them have time to find forgiveness in their heart and don't go straight to them right away, because sometimes they might be just wallowing in that bitterness at first. So give it the proper time, give it a minute, give it a day, whatever it may be. Even if you maybe keep it short and say, hey, I recognize I've done something wrong to you. If it's okay, maybe we can talk in a couple days. I want to apologize. And really make a good statement of apology kind of thing and really connect with them and not just say, hey, I'm sorry about doing that to you, because that doesn't really go over very well. It doesn't sound like it's really coming from the heart. It's especially if someone else had to tell you that you did this thing or whatever it is. So be mindful of your actions and understand that, especially if you hear from the grapevine that they are offended by whatever it is that you've done, try to approach them, try to see if you can make amends. Let them have time to find forgiveness in their heart and ask them with love, and be willing for them to reject your apology. So with that forgiveness, you can asking for forgiveness. It's more so about yourself at that point, where you're willing to let something go, let go of a matter, and you've done your part and you've asked for forgiveness. You've said your apology. You've tried to reach out to them. If they've completely blocked you or ghosted you or whatever it is, they want nothing to do with you, well, then that's now on them, right? Because you're seeking out for something, and always leave that door open. So if they come back, a year or two later or whatever it is, then leave that door open and maybe see if you can get them to the side and say, hey, a long time ago, I know that this happened. I don't really know what happened between us, but I would like to clear the air and really apologize for the thing that I had done to offend you, whatever it may be, right? Seek counsel. Find others to discuss your newfound information, but avoid gossip and judgment. This could be not only counsel for something bad, so this is, oh man, that guy really rubbed me the wrong way and this and that, because that can end up turning into gossip as well. So you can say, hey, I was really bothered by somebody, or even if you mention something, hey, their behavior really bothered me, but it's really getting to me. Can you, can we pray together? Can you help counsel me through this? Can you show me some sort of wisdom or something like this? So seeking counsel for even something new that you've discovered, or some newfound information, something, wow, that guy really made a really great presentation about whatever it is. Don't let your zealousness overtake you, and really find counsel with somebody and say, hey, is this really the right thing? Should, maybe there's another way to look at this. Try to look for alternatives and let the Spirit speak to you again. Try to get yourself into the right place and meditate on this in a way, or even in a group, and say, hey, what about this, and that? Oh, maybe there's some flaws to this. Well, this could be right. Go back and forth with it and find some counsel and say, hey, do you know any better about this? Or I know that this person told me this, but, I know that you're knowledgeable on the subject. What do you think about this? And just get some other altering opinions and what have you, before really getting set in your ways and getting set in your mind and getting overzealous about something. Because as soon as you make that decision, say, well, I now believe this, or I now think this, then that might close the door for the actual truth to come about, right? About that sort of idea or what have you. And again, whenever I say truth, I don't necessarily mean the facts, because we might never know a lot of these facts. We might not know the whole truth to a situation, but we can know the truth when it comes to what is weightier, what is more important about this thing. Does it really have any cause or effect to your life, like say a calendar or cosmology or any of these type of things? Does this affect how that person next to you is being treated? Then it's probably not something to put all of your zeal into. Now, I would say, yeah, be zealous about helping others and self-sacrifice, but whenever it comes to zeal about all of these different doctrines and things, that's where we can really get led astray. So even again, if it was 100% factual, it could still lead us down the wrong road, because it leads us to the wrong kind of behavior and how we deal with these type of things. So meditation. Take time to digest what someone has presented or what you have learned before making up your mind or dismissing it or building a counter argument to something. So before you're like, oh, I know that person was wrong and I'm gonna tell them off, I'm gonna tell this, I'm gonna correct them, and whatever it is that you're seeing, like, go, well, if I'm really right, what would be the best way to show them my way, or whatever I understand as being this truth, or whatever it is that you're you're upset about because someone else understands something differently. Like, is there a way to present my side to this? I wonder if that would, help them, or, see it as like, hey, I'm going to add my name to the hat, and that's it. Add your name to the hat and move on. You don't have to force this down their throat or anything like that. They have a few things to choose from and go, well, I'm going to weigh these things out and see which is the best way for me to go for right now, or my best understanding for right now, and be open to a new understanding every day. Test the spirit. Not only test their message, but test your own by testing the spirit behind it. So this is about that delivery of the message again. So if someone is saying something that sounds all correct, but their behavior is very heated, very even, they're gossiping about someone else, they're slandering someone else, they're being very prideful, they're being overly zealous about whatever this topic is, and we've seen 1,000 different videos on YouTube, I'm sure, and they might have great information, and there might be a lot of meat there and maybe a lot of bones to spit out too, but you really got to be careful about just fully accepting somebody, especially if their behavior just does not match the message that they're trying to give out. So like, oh, well, God says this, and God's way is this, and this is how this is supposed to be. But if your behavior is so far from that, then it's probably not the person you should be listening to. If you're digging for some sort of clues or something like that, sure, just be cautious though. And be cautious on getting yourself to be a fanboy of somebody and just going, well, this person really must just know their stuff, because again, we're all children in this and we really don't know what we're talking about. So even if someone has 30 years in this or whatever it may be, they're probably so narrow sighted on whatever topic that they're really interested in that they're missing so many other things. So this is why, we're really supposed to test the spirit in this and see if there's a good message behind whatever it is that they're saying. Pray and seek discernment. So pray for and practice wisdom that can discern the message and see through the lies and the counterfeit truth. So I'll probably elaborate on this whole truth thing later or link to another place, because we can really get lost on, again, that word truth and think, well, I'm a truth seeker and I'm looking for this and I'm looking for the facts and I'm trying to be a detective here. But you're also running over a whole bunch of people and behaving really wildly and immature at the same time. So, and that's so far from the truth, right? That's far from the truth that the Messiah came here to give us, right? He came to give us the bread that's going to be the nourishment for us to get to the next life that's going to last into the next life. And all these different doctrines are just going to wash away. So they're really not that important, and they can be interesting. They can, fill up our time and what have you. But once we start using these things against each other, you automatically know that is just not the truth. And you should probably just throw it away or find another way of dealing with it, because it's just not the way. And last one, dealing with the feeling of inadequacy. That's a hard one to say. But yeah, it's that feeling of just being so small and you feel like so inadequate, so unworthy of even being in that group or having something to say, or someone has belittled you so much and the message that you had to give, that you just maybe even feel like giving up, or you again just feel so small, and use that to humble yourself, right? Hold on to it and say, yes, you are small, you are not special, and don't get so
Yeah.
high and mighty, and take that and meditate on that and say, yes, okay, I may not be the best in this. I'm probably not the best in that, but maybe the Father's showing me this or giving me this sort of inadequacy, or I don't know, embarrassment, I guess, to take me down a notch, because maybe you were being very prideful in this, and you were trying to show off in doing this, and then no one's just giving you any attention about it and things like this. Something I faced quite a lot. So what were you gonna say, Tammy?
The
Hmm.
other thing that went with the feeling of inadequacy is the fear of failure. That was the other
Fear
one
of
we were
failure.
talking about that night. Yeah, the fear of failure. Because sometimes whenever we allow fear to rule our hearts, it causes us to stumble and fall and take our eyes away from the Father, because we know we're not worthy, but yet He's building us up. That's where that whole, are you going to be purified or consumed by the fire as you go through your trials and tribulations?
How do I make that sound better or more relevant to inadequacy?
Well, okay, so I wrote a paper a long time ago about the fear of failure. Some people won't try if they think that they're not going to be able to be successful at it. They have such a high standard
Ah,
in there. They get petrified by that fear of failure. And so when I wrote this paper, I was addressing what would be my fears of failure in this situation. So I don't get the accolades. So I'm not as successful as some people are. It's a matter of trying. It's a matter of breaking out of that comfort zone and trying, giving that fear to the Father, because that's how Satan keeps us in bondage, is through fear, whether it's failure or achieving the simplest things like getting up and reading your Bible. You know, I don't want to read my Bible this morning because I've only got 5 minutes. Well, take that 5 minutes and do it anyways. Pretty soon you feel like you failed the Father because you didn't do what you probably should have done.
pick
And it
up.
goes in all areas of your life too. You feel like you're failing your children, your spouse, when you allow that fear, of not being successful kind of resonate, then yeah, it opens the doors for other things.
And, some of this might seem, like it's preaching to the choir to people, but it's the idea that are you actually doing these things? Can you remind yourself enough to start doing these things?
Oh gosh, the whole time you were going through this, I'm like doing this checklist. Oh, I did that. Oh, I
Yeah,
did that.
I'm
Yeah, I'm guilty of
preaching to
that.
myself here. Yeah, exactly.